Well, you know I love movies, and I want you to guess something this morning. One of my favorite lines from any movie that's been used as sort of a catchphrase right now. Everybody uses it. What's the line that you think of from Apollo 13? Anybody? Houston, we have a problem. Everybody gets that one, right? And it's such a catchphrase. There are even jokes about that line, believe it or not. And it's a little bit politically incorrect, but you're okay with politically incorrect, aren't you? It's about women, so we have to own this. So anyway, they want you to, the joke goes, pretend it was a woman astronaut. How would that have gone a little differently? You ready? So here it is. The woman astronaut says, Houston, we have a problem. And NASA said, well, what's your problem? And the woman astronaut says, never mind, I'm fine. And NASA says, no, really, what's the problem? And the woman says, well, you know what it is. I shouldn't have to tell you. Anyway, I laughed when I read that because I love saying that line, Houston, we have a problem. And then the other week I read a quote by Theodore Rubin. I don't know who he is, but I love what he said, and it just made me think. He said, the problem is not that there are problems. The problem is expecting otherwise and thinking that having problems is a problem. And I thought, oh, I had to think about that for a moment. In other words, when we think we're having a problem and we label it as a problem, we immediately go into our frenzy. You know, we just go batshit, you know what. And we work ourselves into this frenzy. And as soon as it's solved, what happened? Did I say that in church? I'm sorry. I should have started off with being politically incorrect because it goes down a rabbit hole. And I don't know. Anyway, as soon as the problem is solved, what happens? Another problem pops up. I think problems are like, when my kids were little, they had one of those little things where you knock a peg down and another one comes up. And all my life, it seems like I've always been dealing with one problem after another. I mean, when I was young, I used to obsess about homework, you know, how was I going to get this done and so forth. And then as an adult, I obsessed about work challenges. When I was young, I didn't know what was going to happen or what I was supposed to do or how I was supposed to do something. And as an adult, it's okay, how's this going to unfold? It goes on and on. And then you add to that issues of karma. Oh, now we're talking, aren't we? You know, my dad used to always say, did your dad used to say what goes around comes around? My dad said that all the time. I think he was hoping for some sort of karmic justice in the world, even though he didn't call it that. Michael always says when somebody does something, I'm going to turn them over to the lords of karma. Hope that does the trick. Anyway, if you live with total faith in the law of karma, because that comes from the law of cause and effect, if I do this, then this is what will come back on me. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but if you live by that, it will never stop. I mean, come on, I'm always doing something stupid, aren't you? And I will just be dealing with karma forever if I have to go by the law of cause and effect and karma. I choose to believe and live through the law of grace. The law of grace, which is above the law of karma, above the law of cause and effect. And so when we change our perception from this is a problem to focusing on the divine presence in the situation, not a problem, but a situation, it changes. So if you feel comfortable, please repeat with me. This is just what's before me today. Together? This is just what's before me today. In union with God, I walk through this with grace and ease. Together? In union with God, I walk through this with grace and with ease. And immediately you feel your whole body start to relax. There's a reason for this. There's a blessing here. And it's going to lead me to the next step in my life. And yes, the next problem in my life as well. But then we start it all over again. And when we choose to see it differently, it takes the sting out of it. It takes the worry out of it. It takes the fear out of it. And when we trust and surrender to the divine presence within the situation, It always takes us to a higher, more expanded state of consciousness. Everything that comes to us in life is to help us free ourselves, expand ourselves, and rise up to a higher state of mind. So instead of seeing them as problems, oh, this is just another step on my spiritual path of constantly expanding and going higher. And whatever the situation is, knowing your union with the divine is going to be the answer to walking through this. God is not a being dispensing power. God is the power in you. God is not a being dispensing wisdom. God is the wisdom in you. And God is not a being dispensing peace to some and not others. God is the peace in everyone, and we choose then to center in that state of peace, that place of power, and the strength comes, the guidance comes, the answer comes. So one more time, and repeat with me, this is just what's before me today. Okay, together? This is just what's before me today. In union with God, I walk through this with grace and ease. Together? In union with God, I walk through this with grace and ease. Now, there are metaphysical steps to going through life and mystical steps. I love the dance. You have to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. So the metaphysical steps set that power in motion, that divine power moving in and through us all. So to direct that power, we use our intention and our thoughts. To empower the power, we use our spoken word to give it energy, and our feeling nature to give it energy. And then we trust whatever's before us, no matter if it looks like a situation or a problem, and act on divine guidance, moving in and through it. And the divine presence is unlimited. But we human beings, that's why we get worried about problems. We think from a more limited consciousness, a more limited range. And we tend to believe in that limited power instead of the unlimited power that is within us all. Now, the mystical steps are just the opposite, but equally necessary. After you speak the word and have the intention, let it go. Oops, let it go. And when the pressure mounts and you start to feel stretched like a rubber band, what happens when your rubber band gets out here all stretched? What do? You let go, and what happens? That rubber band takes off, right? You just don't want to aim it at somebody, right? Releasing attachment to the outcome, releasing attachment to what it's going to look like. And that's the big oops altogether. Now, oops, release attachment to the outcome. May not be the right time frame that you're thinking would happen. May not look like what you thought it was going to look like. The price might be different. It might be even better. God always works in upgrades. So you have to trust that it's not showing up like you thought. But divine will always expands, always increases. So every problem is really an issue of expanding consciousness. Repeat with me. The thought God holds of me, together, the thought God holds of me is so much greater than the thought I hold of myself, than the thought I hold of myself. And if you can believe that, that's called grace, because the thought that you are held in divine mind is so much greater than the thought we hold of ourselves. Now, Jesus taught the expanding consciousness of the kingdom of God. He called it the kingdom of God, which is really a state of mind. And do y'all love treasure hunts? Yeah. Do you go to the All Good consignment stores? We love to go to the All Good consignment stores. They have about 3 of them. And it's like going for a treasure hunt, like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to find, right? And so the first parable Jesus told about the kingdom of God was like a man going out into a field and finding a buried treasure. And then he reburies it, goes and sells all that he owns, buys the land, digs up the treasure and sells what he found. Or it's like finding a pearl of great price, going home, selling it, all that you have to buy the pearl of great price. He called the kingdom of God consciousness like a mustard seed that is so tiny, but when planted grows into a big plant, so tall the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. Or he told stories of women kneading yeast into the bread. I know my mother made 20 loaves at a time. She had one of these big bread pans. Her arms were very strong. And she would knead that bread and then let it rest. And the pan would come right off the dish. It was that big, and the pan would just rise right off. So that's what our life is like, constantly expanding. And it looks like a problem. This is changing. This isn't going where I thought it was going to go. But oops, then all of a sudden there you are with this more expanded and higher consciousness. So problems are opportunities for the divine presence to set in motion that expanded way of being. And love constantly carries you higher and forward if you don't get in the way. Oops, if you don't get in the way. Master Eckhart, the German mystic, said, let God be God in you. Let the divine be divine in you. Turn away from the outer focus toward the divinity within, okay? Now, I had a closing to this message. It was very syrupy spiritually. It was so boring, so boring. But luckily we watched a movie last night. We get Amazon Prime, and it was free on Amazon Prime. Anybody seen the movie Hector and the Search for Happiness? I'd never heard of it. It is adorable, Hector and the Search for Happiness, and based on a true psychiatrist who decided to find out what makes people happy, because he noticed most people that came to him weren't happy, and he didn't think he was too happy either. So he took off from his job and traveled around the world asking people and looking what made people happy and what people weren't happy and why they weren't happy. And it was the cutest movie ever. And he found out, in a sense, that happiness is a choice. There were people who had so many problems. There were people who were homeless. There were people who had nothing, and yet they seemed to be happy. And there were other people he met that seemed to have it all, and they were miserable. And so he asked all these people all the questions, and he realized that we can choose. And it's all about being fully present in every moment. Fully letting go of attachment and being fully present to every moment, no matter what's going on. And fully experiencing all the feelings that go with it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, just fully embracing, fully accepting. He found that happiness was not an absence of problems, but not resisting the problems, to feel and allow that full range of the experience and the emotions. Maybe next week we'll talk about all the different things Hector learned on his path around the world for finding happiness. Meanwhile, if you're comfortable, repeat after me. I let go of resistance. Together. I let go of resistance. I choose to face what is before me and feel it all. Together. I choose to face what is before me and feel it all. In union with God, I'm guided through this. Together. In union with God, I'm guided through this. I trust the flow of divine power in my life. Together. I trust the flow of divine power in my life. And now let us take that into prayer, just breathing it all out. Any fear or discomfort, just letting it go. Fully trusting that you are an aspect of the divine, and all that is divine flows in and through you. Whatever is needed is provided. The light that shows you the way. The expanding power that brings to you all that would bless you in the long run, all that would expand and lift you to a higher state of mind. And we just bless it all. We call it all good. We call it all joy. And we rejoice in each other's presence through the love and the support, the laughter and the tears. And we are grateful. And so it is. Amen.